I had always been intrigued by the idea of spending a weekend in a secluded cabin in the woods, surrounded by nature and away from the hustle and bustle of city life. When my friend suggested we go on such an adventure, I eagerly agreed. Little did I know, this trip would turn into a nightmare that I would never forget. The drive to the cabin was long and winding, with the dense forest closing in on us as we ventured deeper into the wilderness. The air was crisp, and the scent of pine filled our lungs. We were a group of 5, Sarah, Mike, Laura, Tom, and me. We had been friends since college, and this trip was supposed to be a reunion of sorts, a chance to reconnect and reminisce about old times. We arrived at the cabin just as the sun was setting. It was an old, weathered structure, standing alone amidst the towering trees. There was something unsettling about its appearance, but we brushed it off, attributing it to our overactive imaginations. Inside, the cabin was rustic but cozy, with a large fireplace dominating the living room. We quickly settled in, unpacking our bags and preparing dinner. As night fell, we gathered around the fireplace, sharing stories and laughter. The warmth of the fire and the comfort of my friend's presence made me feel at ease. But that feeling was short-lived. It started with small things, shadows moving in the corner of my eye, whispers that seemed to come from nowhere. I shrugged it off, blaming the eerie atmosphere of the forest. The first real sign that something was wrong came when Tom decided to explore the basement. He had always been the adventurous one, never shying away from a challenge. As he descended the creaky wooden stairs, we heard a loud crash, followed by a scream. We rushed to his aid, finding him on the floor, tail end shaking. He claimed to have seen a man, his face twisted in a grotesque grin, standing in the corner of the basement. We laughed it off, teasing Tom for his overactive imagination. But as the night wore on, the occurrences became more frequent and more terrifying. Doors would slam shut on their own, cold drafts would sweep through the cabin, and we would hear footsteps echoing in the empty hallways. The final straw came when we found Sarah's room ransacked, with her belongings strewn across the floor and a message scrawled on the wall in what appeared to be blood. You should never have come here. Panic set in. We decided to leave the cabin immediately, but our car wouldn't start. It was as if something, or someone, was determined to keep us there. Desperation took over, and we huddled together in the living room, trying to come up with a plan. That's when we heard the voice, a low, menacing growl that sent chills down my spine. It spoke of a man who had once lived in the cabin, a serial killer who had terrorized the forest, luring victims to their doom. His spirit, restless and vengeful, still haunted the place. The night seemed to stretch on forever. We were trapped, with no way out, and a malevolent presence closing in on us. The spirit of the killer made his presence known, tormenting us with visions of his gruesome deeds. We saw flashes of his victims, their faces contorted in agony, their pleas for mercy echoing in our ears. It was a nightmare come to life, and there was no waking up from it. In the early hours of the morning, as the first light of dawn began to filter through the trees, we made a desperate bid for freedom. With the car still refusing to start, we decided to make a run for it, hoping to reach the nearest town on foot. The forest seemed to close in on us, branches clawing at our clothes, unseen eyes watching our every move. We stumbled upon an old, overgrown path that seemed to lead to safety, but as we hurried along it, we heard the sound of footsteps behind us, growing closer and closer. I turned to see a shadowy figure, the same grotesque grin on his face, his eyes burning with a malevolent fire. He was coming for us, and there was no escape. In a final act of desperation, I turned to face the spirit, shouting at him to leave us alone. To my surprise, he hesitated, his form flickering as if struggling to maintain his presence. It was then that I realized he was feeding off our fear, summoning every ounce of courage. I stepped forward, challenging him, refusing to let him control us any longer. With a guttural roar, the spirit vanished, the forest falling silent once more. We were free, but the experience had left us scarred, the memory of that night forever etched in our minds. We eventually made it to safety, but the cabin, and the horrors we faced within its walls, would haunt us forever. In the weeks that followed, each of us tried to move on with our lives, but the haunting memories of the night lingered. Tom began to have nightmares of the basement and the sinister grin of the spirit. Sarah struggled with the feeling of being constantly watched, and Mike developed a paranoia that made it difficult for him to be alone. Laura and I did our best to support them, but the psychological scars were deep. It was not until months later that I learned of a local legend about the cabin and the forest surrounding it. According to the tale, the spirit of the killer was that of a man named Elias Crane, a notorious serial killer who had terrorized the region in the late 1800s. Elias was said to have been captured and executed, but his spirit was rumored to haunt the forest, luring unsuspecting victims to his cabin. The legend also spoke of a cursed artifact, a small, ornate box hidden somewhere in the cabin. The box was said to contain the essence of Elias' malevolent spirit, and those who disturbed it would be doomed to suffer the same fate as his previous victims. The more I learned about the legend, the more I began to suspect that the box might have been the source of the horror we experienced. Determined to put the past behind us, I decided to investigate further. I returned to the town and met with local historians and paranormal experts, hoping to uncover more about the cursed box and the true nature of Elias Crane's spirit. The more I delved into the history, the clearer it became that our encounter was not just a series of coincidences, but part of a much darker story. In the end, I realized that the experience had left a permanent mark on my life and the lives of my friends. The cabin in the woods had been more than just a secluded getaway. It had been a trap set by a restless spirit seeking to claim new victims. The memory of that night would forever be a part of me, a constant reminder of the darkness that can lurk even in the most seemingly peaceful places. I often wonder if the spirit of Elias Crane still prowls the forest, waiting for the next group of unsuspecting visitors to stumble upon his cursed domain. The forest has remained silent since our departure, but the memory of our ordeal serves as a chilling reminder that some places are best left undisturbed. And so, as I recount this tale, I hope it serves as a warning to others who might seek the thrill of isolation in the woods. There are stories that should remain untold in places that should never be visited. The cabin in the forest is one such place, a dark chapter in my life that I wish to be forgotten, but will forever linger in the shadows of my memory. Thank you for joining me on this terrifying journey. If you enjoyed this story, please like, share, and subscribe for more spine-chilling experiences. Until next time, stay safe and beware of the darkness that lies beyond the light.